There's a fantastic set of experts here that I have. We are going ahead and proceeding with the first panel. The first panel is titled, it has cross-border cooperation in its title, basically. Although they are titles for all panels, it doesn't necessarily mean that we only stick to that one very narrow thing. And definitely cross-border cooperation for developing offshore wind energy is absolutely crucial, especially in the Baltic Sea region where the countries are, rather small, especially if we look at the Baltic states. The borders are tight, the space is tight, so without cooperation, of course we can do things, but it's better to cooperate to harvest best of what we can get out of wind energy available in the Baltic Sea. So let me first make a quick tour of the panel, and I'll begin with Edis from my end. You're welcome to introduce yourself to the audience and briefly explain what is on the table of your organization currently in the context of wind energy and renewables probably in general.
Okay, good morning, and thank you, Reinis, for introductory part. My name is Edis Šaicāns. I'm Deputy State Secretary of Ministry of Economics. I'm responsible for energy policy and all topics which are related to the energy issues. And actually, I think it's clear what is our main agenda currently on table. If you look on geopolitical situation, what is going on in the world, actually that's also makes also our agenda in ministry. And definitely we see that one of key necessary steps which should be done, of course, we need to strengthen our security of supply, strengthen our generation capacities here in Latvia and in the Baltic region in the whole. And I think that is one of main topics what we will discuss also today. How can we do that? How we see it, and definitely the wind. And here I want to say that both ways, also onshore and offshore wind, is the utmost important things here also in Latvia. And therefore, from our side as policymakers, I think it's important, and we see the trends, we see how all the system develops, and how can we come together with potential stakeholders who wants to develop the projects and look our possibilities to help to get these projects done in place.
Thank you, Edis. Andri, over to you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's okay? Yeah? Okay. Good morning. And also I'm glad that I was invited. I'm representing Ministry of Environment, and I'm a Deputy of State Secretary, and I'm responsible for environment protection. As my colleague Eddie just told, the same issues or the same targets are on our table. But mainly I'm here because we are responsible, and we will be responsible for this environmental impact assessment process. And so our main target today is how to organize that process to become more quicker and easier, and so to make those things and those projects move on faster. So this is the main topic, and I will try to explain later some in details what we are doing.
Thank you, Andris, for the quick introduction. And we are absolutely excited to have also Hanna here from Equinor. She's involved in developing offshore wind, but Hanna, please explain yourself.
Yes, thanks, Remus. It's a pleasure here to be with you all. My name is Hanna-Mary Gudlad, and I'm the head of the Baltic development within Equinor. Equinor is a global energy company. We develop oil and gas and renewables. And we have the Baltic Sea as one of our key clusters within renewables for growth. Key within Poland, Sweden, some of the Baltic states. We have operations within Germany, within a partner-operated asset. And we also see the potential of the Baltic Sea really being an area for cross-border collaboration and cooperation and accelerating the energy transition towards Europe. Scale really matters for Equinor. Currently, we're building the largest offshore wind farm in the east coast of the UK, the Dogger Bank wind farm. And we're also building the world's largest floating wind farm high wind Tampen. And I took a rain check yesterday, and I saw that the first of the turbines has been assembled off the west coast of Norway. So scale really matters in this game. And it's very important to be able to accelerate and do things at scale and at pace. But I want to zoom out to highlight one very important factor that goes beyond energy companies like Equinor or beyond governments. And I think that is about solving the energy trilemma. And when I say the trilemma, I mean the affordability, the sustainability, and the reliability of energy. We have to do that as a trio. I've often heard it said that you can't be green if you're in the red. But if you don't enable the green transition, we're very soon going to be in the red zone as well. So that has to be the focus of Europe and other sort of nations around the world to really solve the energy trilemma as a trio and make sure that sustainability, reliability, and affordability are front and center and equal with one another.
Thank you. Great that you mentioned this energy trilemma. I think it's quite often that we, in the heat of the debate, forget about one of the elements here. So I think it's paramount importance to keep an eye on all three aspects of this. Thank you. Once again, Timo Tatari is a seasoned expert and civil servant also in the energy field. But let me welcome you here, and please a few introductory words from your side.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as a seasoned expert, so I haven't heard that before. Yes, I'm responsible for drafting energy policy in Estonia, and, well, I think the challenge for us is quite easy, how to transform our energy to a climate-neutral one within 28 years, is it? So the challenge is, or the task is clear, of course, but the challenge is how to do it in a way that we keep in mind all those important aspects you just mentioned, the trilemma. So how to make it in an affordable way, in a sustainable way, and how to keep also the level of energy security on a level which we have become used to in recent years. So clearly, if you zoom in, then you see that there are a lot of challenges which also can be seen as opportunities. And this is the mindset we are having in Estonia, that those are not challenges, those are opportunities. We are quite ambitious, small and ambitious. So the Danish energy minister just mentioned their level of ambition. Actually, we are having exactly the same ambition by 2030, 70% carbon reductions. And actually, we are quite well on track, even ahead of that track. So I'm quite confident that we will see even larger reductions by 2030. And clearly, wind energy plays there a crucial or the most important role. So the more wind we are having in the system, the more affordable prices we are having. When the wind is coming from offshore, then it opens up also entire new possibilities for hydrogen, for instance, or for storage. So clearly, those are the elements which we have to put smartly into the picture in order for Estonia and for the European community to transform itself to climate neutral by 2050.
Thanks. What a good summary indeed. And last but not least, Mette, over to you, Danish Energy Agency.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Mette Buch. I'm very flattered to be invited to this forum today. I'm with the Danish Energy Agency. We have at the Danish Energy Agency a global cooperation section where I am employed. My background is I've been working for many years with offshore wind, developing the way that we do offshore wind in Denmark. And now I'm fortunate enough to travel around the world with this story of how did we succeed in Denmark in making offshore wind such a large part of our energy system. And we do have cooperation with the Baltic Sea countries. we are all small countries. We share the same sea, so this collaboration is also very important for Denmark, because we are going to share some of the same challenges. And I hope with my participation today, I hope that I might be able to also share some of those considerations that small countries have in planning the development of offshore wind, in working with investors, in creating stable policy environments for the deployment of offshore wind energy. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So after this introductory round, let me just briefly explain how I wish this panel to proceed. I'll definitely I have my questions prepared beforehand, but I absolutely encourage all the participants also to interact directly between themselves, not to wait and go through the moderator. I'll just be following the overall focus of the panel, and I'll definitely encourage that you interact between yourselves directly. If you see that there is a good moment to interrupt somebody, just say, hey, it's not exactly like that, or I have something to add to this, so you're welcome to do that. I'll be following so that you have roughly the same time cumulatively during the panel to say some things that you wish to say. But one thing which I would like to begin with is why offshore wind, in fact, because the LCOE, or levelized cost of electricity figures, clearly show that onshore wind still is cheaper than offshore wind, and depending on geological and hydrological conditions and environmental conditions, offshore wind can be way more expensive than onshore wind. Do you think what makes actually investors and policy makers, root so much for offshore wind while still there is opportunity to develop onshore wind? I'll allow myself to begin with Edis. What is your perspective? And then we'll jump over to other panelists as well.
Yeah, thank you, Renis, for question. Actually, that's always a tough question. It's quite similar, chicken or egg principle, who is the first. But I started also in my introductory part that we in Ministry of Economics, we are looking on the wind as we don't want to compare them onshore or offshore. And our understanding and the commitment, what we see, we need to look also in the long-term run. And from our side and our perspective, we see that both the onshore wind and offshore wind should and must stay in combination. They are one complementing each other. And also, if we look from the policy perspective, as you correctly mentioned, definitely the costs currently of onshore wind is lower than the offshore wind. That is by the fact. But from our side, there is no need to look on these technologies only from the cost perspective. First one, just to remind a little bit from the history, I think a couple of years ago, we were sitting in different discussions about wind at all. And the cost was very high, and we see what was the technological progress in that case. And we trust that offshore wind in developing year by year will become cheaper and cheaper. And we see that also from Latvian perspective, as we see as a policymakers, definitely in the coming years, we see that the onshore wind should go to 2030 when the offshore wind should come in. And that's obviously, I think, necessary to look on these both technologies. And maybe two more points from my side to mention about other topics which should be evaluated also when we discuss about the wind, onshore or offshore. Cost is one side, which is very good one. Next one side, I think, is advanced progress, what we can achieve and get as a state, as society to develop the offshore wind. I think there is a great opportunity to research and development activities, as well as get us much more technology with much more added values. And the third one point is I think our participants in this event is really linked to the wind energy, and we know that there is also this principle not in my backyard in the onshore wind. And I think that's one of reasons why we see that offshore is going far away from the communities. There is no such resistance from the society, and it could be much more easier to implement later on, closer to the 2030, as I mentioned.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on this? Yes, Hanna, go ahead.
Yes, so a little bit of a rewind. people, societies have been using wind since the Egyptian times. So we're very well versed in this technology, and it has grown and it has developed, and we've become more efficient at using it. I agree to an extent that we shouldn't see the competition between offshore wind and onshore wind. We need an energy system. We need to diversify our energy mix and have many technologies supporting one another and ourselves. But there is something special about offshore wind. It is the scalability. You can build bigger. And as I said in my introduction, scale really matters, and size matters in this game. It also has, like my good colleague said, less of an impact when it comes to not in my backyard. And there are communities offshore. There's the fishers, there's the other users of the sea, but it's not so as intensely occupied space. So there's that element as well. And then there's the wind resource itself. Offshore wind is stronger and more predictable and more reliable and consistent than onshore wind. So you get more bang for your buck, put it that way. You have to spend more to deploy these technologies and farms at scale, but the resource potential is greater. And so that's why Equinor, we really see a great fit with offshore wind, with our portfolio. But also, secondly, big companies like ourselves that have 50 years of experience on the Norwegian continental shelf developing offshore projects in oil and gas, we see that technology very transferable across. And we see our people and the competence being able to handle these harsh environments offshore. We see that very transferable as well. And the final point I'll make about this is you've got onshore wind, you've got offshore wind, but then you've got the extra realm of offshore, which is floating frontier. And that really is going to be the next big push when it comes to offshore game. 80% of the world's water depths are greater than 100 meters. So in order to crack that code, we need a different technology, and that is where floating comes into play. Further offshore, even still, stronger winds and better resources and more bang for your buck.
That's a good intervention. Yes, Mette, you have something to add. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one small note. I agree with everything. The wind is more stable. The scale is much larger. I think it's important to remember to do both onshore and offshore, because the energy mix is also quite important for us to manage the green transition. But the scale particularly is very important. It won't be possible for us to manage our climate targets if we do not also employ offshore wind. But the one thing I wanted to mention was that there's actually it's also it's not only a matter of getting cheap, stable energy, but it's also job creation. There's a lot of impact for the society developing in developing offshore wind, and we've seen in Denmark. That industrial clusters have developed and prepared themselves before the offshore wind actually is built, in order to attract the attention of the developers, the large-scale investments coming into the country, preparing to receive those large-scale investments. And I think that I'm mentioning this now because even though that Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania do not yet have offshore wind energy, I would say that this is a time to start preparing already, actually preparing the industrial clusters that will receive these large-scale investments in society.
Timo, Mette referred just to necessity to go ahead with the offshore wind. Is it the main reason why Estonia has had so much development in onshore wind so far, and now you are planning to scale up also offshore? Well, considering we have zero offshore currently, it's easy to scale up from zero.
Yeah, that's true. From zero, every growth is a huge growth in percentage-wise. So can't argue with numbers. But yeah, how we see it in Estonia. So in fact, the onshore wind developments hasn't been also due encouraging in Estonia for last couple of years, and we clearly see that for Estonia until 2030, the most new wind farms will be still built onshore. But you're absolutely right. To be ready to go offshore, we have to make preparations now. There is no time to waste, no time to lose. Otherwise, we will face the consequences later when we don't have the time. So clearly, we are now making everything we can, preparations that offshore could follow shortly the onshore developments. And our plan sees that we have to increase the wind energy share by 4 times until 2030. So the ambition is clearly there. And of course, the world is not ending with 2030. So there is still a long way to go. And all the preparations we are doing right now is just something which helps us to accelerate the transition after 2030. And why we are looking offshore? So clearly it is scalable, but it is also a way how Estonian territories, and well, half of Estonian territory is sea territory. So in fact, roughly 10% of the Baltic Sea is Estonian territory. It is a way how we can create value of our territory, of our land. First of all, to us, to Estonia, to cover our energy transition or energy needs, but clearly beyond. So the estimated 7 gigawatts of offshore wind potential there is in Estonia is clearly more than we can use ourselves. This is something which can help the European community to move forward the climate neutrality goals. There are many countries who are landlocked, who don't have that luxury to have this selection that whether I would like to go offshore or onshore. So we see this as a contribution to a green transition to tackle climate change, not only in Estonia, but in wider context. And this is the reason why we have to do it smartly, the way that the development is continuous, the development is smart and sustainable in different matters.
Yeah, great introduction, I think. And Andris has not spoken yet, but I think what I heard here, so scalability is definitely one of the central arguments behind developing offshore. Onshore, you usually have very, very fragmented ownership of land. You have to make many agreements and concessions. There's the environmental impact assessment definitely is really complex at times, or if you want to develop scalable wind projects on land. So offshore, from that perspective, seems to be slightly easier, but still, Timo mentioned quite significant capacities that are, well, I'd say on the horizon and beyond the horizon, even physically, right? I've spoken to Edis earlier. He also has said that there are huge capacities in planning, basically. And I want to ask Andris, therefore, since he represents the Ministry of Environmental Protection as well, and one of the issues which the ministry that you are representing also is the one looking after the procedures which are extremely important. These are these environmental impact assessment procedures and all the institutions and processes behind that. Do you see any risks? I'm not contravening here. I'm not trying to put environmental impact assessment as an enemy to the wind energy industry. In fact, I think it's important these two collaborate closely to get the best out of it. But maybe you can cast some light on whether this cross-border aspect and the scale of this industry, what sort of impact that can have on these processes?
From our perspective, I would say I would start with a small problem that we don't have any practical experience here in Latvia with such kind of projects. So mainly my thoughts or our thoughts on those issues is theoretical and what we heard from our colleagues. So the one thing is what we have heard, and also the same problem is not only in the sea but also on the land, is that during the process there are some kind of changes in legislation. So it's the one thing what we have heard. Then it's also when it's cross-border, and also not only cross-border, but when in a small region there's a lot of projects, we should calculate these cumulative impacts. And also this is the issue what we have to deal, because if there are different projects, then how one project can know the other project in details, and how this project can calculate these impacts and give some kind of view on what to do and how to manage these things. Then also this changes or possible changes in nature inventory data, which also can be, because the process is quite long, and during that process we can find out some new things, and it also might be a problem. And then I would say the biggest problem what we have seen is this this lack of social acceptance for those projects. And in the end, actually, it is that no decision is made by municipality. Do we agree or not? And so this social acceptance or lack of this acceptance, and then the pressure to the municipality sometimes finishes with nothing. And so these are the things or topics which we see we need to deal with. Legislation, of course, is quite strong, and we know the framework of the legislation and the rules and things and steps what we need to do. I think that legislation can't, or changes in legislation can't manage all those problems. We see that it's possible to make some changes, and we are now working, but it's not especially for sea wind farms. But I think the principles are the same. We're working on the law, how to help or how to organize easier and quicker those projects. So what we do, we try to define territories where it is allowed, or also where it is prohibited, and also we define territories where it might be allowed with some certain, let's say, rules or things which you can done simultaneously while the project is in the process, and you have to finish these things till the end. So I think that the same principles we can use or change or involve in those sea offshore this wind farm projects. But this is, I would say, from the legal perspective that we can change some things. But I think that mainly we should think about some kind of, I don't know how to call it, some kind of handbook or some kind of making a system which is, let's say, yeah, I would call it actually some kind of handbook or where we agree on some things and how not only project developers are working on those projects, but also people who are dealing from this state side, and also experts who are organizing these expertises, which are on the base of all that. So I think that we need, out of legislation, we need some common understanding of what we should do and what we not only should do, but also how it's going to be done. And when we all have this, or will have this same understanding, then all these processes might go on faster and faster. So we know that even in the law, when it's like we read the law, many lawyers can understand from it differently. when it goes to this environmental impact assessment, there is so many details which all experts can understand differently, or
it can be twisted quite easily.
Yeah.
In fact, yes.
So we need some kind of common understanding of all that.
So basically, it's a playbook, and I've noticed already Hanna nodding. Okay, go ahead, Hanna.
No, I completely agree. I think that this legislation standardization that you talk so well about is key. And, you know, the Baltic Sea Cooperation Agreement actually sets a very good space for the 8 countries around the Baltic Sea to develop that level of standardization, that level of process, that understanding that actually it doesn't need to be as convoluted as it has been in the past, and that you can enable things to happen faster when it comes to environmental permits and also consenting. Because that is one of the fundamental roadblocks to getting to the 300 gigawatts that we need by 2050 across Europe, is the consenting. It is taking too long. In some cases, it takes 10 years to build, to get the consent for a wind farm, and then it takes a day to build a wind turbine. Now, so those sort of figures, when you hear them side by side, they paint a picture, right? So this idea of standardization across the consenting regulatory regime is key. And I think that the Baltic Sea has a great opportunity to bypass some of the mistakes that have gone before across other parts of Europe. I talk from a UK perspective on the very intense and in-depth consenting regimes that exist there. Learn from that. Bypass some of that. Take away some of the red tape. Standardize. How can you see that the 8 countries across the Baltic Sea can work together? And my second point is on the social acceptance, and that is key. You know, we need to get to a point in society where we don't appear frightened to see a wind turbine on the horizon, but we feel proud to see that. And we'll feel proud that a wind turbine is on the horizon. That means our city is net zero, right? I think that's difficult, because people, they have their own agendas, and of course you have the not in my backyard. But I think one part of getting to that social acceptance lies on the responsibility of the developers to communicate and to engage as early and as meaningful as possible.
But also on the state. I would say also on the
Yes.
state, because it's not only the matter of energy or energy companies, it's also a matter of climate, and it's also a matter of all society. So we all who are here, representatives from energy sector, from commercial sector, and from government, we all are interested in those projects. So also, I think that this dealing with, not dealing, but working with society and explaining them the meaning of those projects is crucial and very important, and we all need to work on that.
But not only the meaning, the benefit to local communities,
benefit.
local jobs, education. We need to get better at communication.
Yes, I have something in mind for Timo and Edis, but before going to them, I want to invite Mette just to comment briefly. I know that, well, Denmark is definitely, well, first of all, Denmark is, from a point of view of territory, a small country, right? But it has plenty of sea as well, just as Timo said, Estonia has. So you have plenty of experience in dealing with these issues. Maybe you can share some comments on this from what you've had so far, common playbook or rules, book of rules, so to say. Can you do without that, or do you really need this common understanding? I'm just playing a little bit of a devil's advocate. Okay, there's a green light for industry, just go ahead.
No, there's definitely, you have a very, very good point, and I'd like to pick up on the BEMIP collaboration. Commissioner Simmons also mentioned the fact that has got a new offshore wind focus, a new group. That group is not, unfortunately, it's up and running, but it's not efficient, very efficient yet. But I think that all efforts must be put into making that group work, because we see in the North Seas, we do have a similar collaboration. And it creates, from the public sector side, it creates a fantastic forum to call our neighbors and say, we have this issue. Do you have some experience that we might be able to draw from? It's a very good modality to share experiences, and there is a lot of experience already in the Baltic Sea as well. So if we could get that BEMEP up and working, it would be to the benefit of all countries. Also on the cumulative effects, the environmental impact, there will definitely be issues there, and we need a common and joint approach to solving those issues. Generally, on a more sort of general level, it's not only on the environmental issues and specifically on the offshore wind projects. I think there are lessons to be shared. Also on grid planning. I know this will be a session for later today, but also the general system analysis. It's when we work with investors, they're very focused on the business case of the project. Will there be a certainty for the offset of the production that they have, of course, put a huge amount of investment into, and in order to optimize from the socioeconomic perspective as well and ensure low energy prices in time, the energy trilemma that we already touched upon, having the whole sort of energy system perspective that analyzed and ensured the different projects, the timelines. Now we come back to the roadmaps and the milestone plans. They're extremely important for the build out, because the offshore wind farm is not a self-standing unit. It fits into the full picture of the energy system, and it's important to optimize, so you know when comes which investments should be taken when, and there are lots of information and lots of lessons to be shared amongst authorities, like we do already, but also drawing in the expertise of the skilled investors is also important in this process.
Oh, what a great comment indeed. And now to Eddie's here. All right, so let's narrow it down slightly to the Estonian Latvian situation here, since we also have Timo here. Let's use the opportunity and build on what has already been discussed. So we have a specific project which for many, I think, who are following the conference, also for many, for a broader public, is as mythological as a unicorn. Okay, almost everybody has heard about Elvind, and well, Elvind. This is the big one, the big one offshore. All right, there's going to be a huge wind farm off the Estonian and Latvian coast in the Riga Gulf. Is there a roadmap? Is there a playbook? Can you update us, up to the level that you can disclose information? What is currently the status of it? And I think everybody is so excited at the same time and afraid at the same time. So is it going, is the procedure of going ahead with this project or initiative not going to be too simplified? Is the environmental impact assessment not going to suffer because of these hasty processes? So there's plenty on the table. Can you give a brief comment on that? And after that, I want Timo also to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Reinis. But if you allow, I will come back to previous
question.
Okay,
you're
just
welcome.
Short comment from my side. My understanding and trust what I see, how can we foster and support development of renewables, and especially the wind. I think we need to find the balance between environmental issues and energy issues, policy issues. And that's, I think, the key element what we need to find. And actually, I used to say that I'm quite proud that recently we, together with our colleagues from Ministry of Environment, has found a good pace how to move forward. And I think we need to keep momentum to push it. I think that's the good reason. I think so far it was always the fight between interests, whether it's energy interest, whether it's environment interest, and so on. And I think that the key elements, we need to find the balance. We need to find the compromise solution which fits all of us and move forward. I think that is the key elements. How can we proceed? And if we talk about Elwind, I think it was mentioned already. Commissioner was saying that the Elwind project is one of great examples. And here, before I start, maybe go deeper inside of this project, first, what should be noted, I think that shows a great spirit of cooperation between Baltic countries. I think we show the great supportive and inclusive and open work between us and our colleagues from Estonia. I think Elwind project will be typically the really great example how two countries can come together and and create some regional project and how to push it forward. If you look about timelines, I actually mentioned maybe some sneak peeks in my previous answers that we see closer 2030 that offshore will be in place. And actually, why I mentioned 2030, it's quite simple. I am trying to link it together with the Elwind project. And that is, I think, the Elwind, the timeline, we see that till the 2030, all this job should be done. But if you work about the challenges, of course, as in every process, there is a lot of challenges in front of us. But I think we will have ability to tackle them on, and we will manage to go forward. But the one thing what I want to say about the Elwind, I think that would be useful also for all listeners. Elwind project is not a threat for any other projects, actually, in Baltic Sea, and especially in Latvia, and I hope also in Estonia. That's one of projects what states are developing till some extent of time or to the level, and then it will be auctioned to all other interested persons who want to come in and be investors in this project. Therefore, I could say that that's nothing that we will go some exclusivities or rights to this project. This project will undergo the same procedures as every one private project, no exemptions there. They're all moving the way what they need to follow all these procedures. And what we are doing, we are just showing that offshore wind has a future here in region, and we as policy makers in Latvia and our colleagues from Estonia are just putting this project together to make these first steps, and then when it will be in some level of maturity of the project, it will be given up or will be auctioned to all private investors. I think that's the key. And maybe to sum up what I mentioned, the first is, I think the timeline is 2030, where we see that it could be around 2030 it could be in place. And second one, don't understand that the Elwind is some threat to the other different projects. It's not. It's one of projects in the region, and we are supporting it just to making the push for this project. I think it's all from my side.
Yes, Timo. I know that Estonians also are looking at this offshore wind in the broader context of Estonian energy system.
Yes, I explained our thinking already before. Maybe coming back to the brilliant idea of Latvia or initiative to conduct the environmental impact assessment within 6 months, then clearly if you pull this off, then congratulations. This is something where I think different countries can learn from each other and to constantly challenge each other to become more leaner and more smarter, and I think that is something where I think the PEMI platform as a platform where sharing best practices could be also very useful. And a small comment also about being afraid of the wind farms. Yeah, unfortunately, this is still the case, but I would say that last year, at least, many Europeans were more afraid of opening their energy bills, and I guess that has also sort of a accelerating or encouraging effect that people really realize that the times have changed. It used to be that old and fossil was the cheap and affordable, and new and renewable was expensive. Now it's totally vice versa, and I think this message has slowly but steadily reached to the wider population. So, and I'm quite confident that will also help to overcome with NIMBY. Clearly, there is no silver bullets. There is combination of different things. Communication is the key word there, but still, I think this, at least I'm optimistic that we are seeing a positive developments there. Now coming to Elwind. Well, yeah, you said it is a unicorn. I can say that, you know, Estonians are quite seasoned unicorn farmers, so don't be afraid. We have, I think, the most unicorns per capita, so we know what we are doing. But leaving the jokes aside, then clearly, this is not something to be afraid. We see this as another alternative mean how we can accelerate the offshore wind offtake in the region. We see that there are a lot of benefits, countries acting together, and also I wouldn't underestimate the learning factor which, you know, public servants are getting doing something on their own. Otherwise, you know, we are always, the public servants are in the, you know, different sort of position. You know, we don't have this fingertip feeling what are the struggles, you know, the companies are, you know, dealing every day to, you know, push their project forward. You know, this experience we are gaining from Elwind side, many others, is really beneficial also for the policymakers to sort of see themselves where, you know, the system is not maybe as lean as we want. Talking about the timetable, then I'm quite optimistic that by now, in matter of months, hopefully in May or June, we will announce where are the areas for Elwind. That would create a lot of clarity also for other market participants. And then go ahead with the preparatory works, go ahead with applications to attract also European co-financing for the project, and then follow the original roadmap to have projects ready for tendering in 25, 26, and then to decommission is 2060, I believe, or even further away, but first of all, commission in around 2030.
Yes, so definitely there are many aspects on the table currently, and even if the three Baltic states are looked at as a common region, they are also individual states and with absolutely diverse, absolutely different energy portfolios, each one, and I think it is both an opportunity and a challenge, and it looks like the Baltic states should be looking at the development of offshore wind also in this broader context of the Baltic states as a region.
Yeah, I guess the fact that we have quite a diversified energy portfolio in different countries, which eventually is still one market area, is a strength rather than weakness, because, you know, this helps us to mitigate the different market risks, you know, and also it is, you know, the old proverb of keeping eggs in different baskets. So I think that's clearly a strength that the picture is quite diversified in Baltics. Although the wind energy plays more and more important and crucial role everywhere.
Yes, definitely. Of course, we are going to talk about some aspects in more detail during the next panels. So I very much appreciate your high-level assessments here. But Mette, I saw that you wanted to jump in with a comment.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to some of the concerns about the consenting issues. We've sort of been circling around those in this debate today, and I think it's definitely worthwhile just mentioning that we're all small countries around the Baltic Sea, and we used to looking outside of our own country in order to find inspiration, but on the fact that we are very small markets, it's difficult to attract as much attention as the larger market. When Denmark started up our offshore wind market, we were in huge competition with the big giant on the other side of the North Sea. The UK market was huge, and we only had a tiny pipeline. So it was UK market was just more interesting than Denmark. But I think one of the things that we learned in that process were that we really had to focus on transparency, openness, dialogue as key ways of making ourselves interesting to the investors. And one thing, the consenting was actually, we already at that time worked intensely in collaborating with all the other authorities that needs to approve the project. Already at that time, we worked on developing the understanding of what is offshore wind, why is it unique, why is it special, why do you need to do maybe even a special regulatory framework for this type of project, and keeping that dialogue alive through many different projects, through the marine spatial planning and what we call the one-stop shop, which is basically a very lean consenting process. I think that is probably one of the most successful factors that we've had as a small country in attracting attention and keeping prices down. Because if you have a very sort of not smooth consenting process, the project will have to stop all the time, will be delayed. You don't, I mean, and it's not it doesn't create the interest that you need as a small country to attract the good investments to your own market, attract the good players, the ones that you want to assist you in developing your own energy system.
Great. We actually have a couple of questions that came in through the Slido application. I just want to tackle those two. We still have about 9 minutes for the panel, and one is related to the acceptance issue, and in a way related to that. The question is, how would actually windmills look like from the shore? That can leave very serious impact on landscapes. And this is actually a question which I think almost everybody who thinks of offshore wind has the first thing in mind. Will my sunset be spoiled? Is it gone forever? And how do we deal with that? I don't know, maybe Hanna, you have plenty of experience from that. Yes. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I maybe have a biased view. I feel that they're very elegant structures. I understand that that's a biased view. Maybe a practical reflection that may help some people that are more hesitant to that. We have Highwind Scotland off the coast of Peterhead in Aberdeen. Now that wind farm is 15 to 20 kilometres offshore. You can't see that really on the horizon. And when we're talking about wind farms that are further offshore, you're 30 to 40 to 50, and even further for floating wind farms, that is negligible. You really cannot see that. And that goes for a turbine that is the 6 megawatt at Highwind Scotland, 5 turbines, up to the ones that we have 40 kilometres offshore in the Greater Wash at the east coast of the UK. You can't see them from the shore at all. Different when it's on land, I understand that. These structures are big, they do occupy space, but that's one of the sort of key advantages of doing this offshore, is the horizon and the curvature actually of the globe and the curvature of the horizon. These things become very small, if not, you cannot see them.
So you have to be high above the sea level to actually be able to see those wind farms. They're sufficiently far away. There's another question which is more general and probably that can be addressed to whoever will wish to comment on that. Will renewables, and specifically wind energy, disrupt fossil fuel economies, or those economies which are based on fossil fuels, like there's some examples mentioned, Russia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, probably Venezuela as well. What sort of global impact that might have? I see that Timo already raised his finger.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I sincerely hope so, that they will disrupt.
Okay.
So this is why we are doing it. So I think it's quite easy. And I would like to also answer the first question. So and to maybe ask from the asker that how do you like your energy bill this winter, or how do you like 500 million tons of ash pile aside of a fossil power plant, or how to like floodings or melting of the permafrost and all that. So clearly, there are choices to be made, and clearly there are reasons why wind farms are being built. So it is not, we don't have the luxury of making choices only in this aesthetical categories. Also, I also agree that I even like wind farms in my horizon. But clearly, so it's not sort of question of aesthetics that what I liked more or not. So there are reasons why the green transition is happening.
Great. I also noticed that Metse wants to connect. Did I see your finger here?
Yes, just a quick comment. I think it's quite obvious that renewable energy generally is definitely disrupting the different strengths of the countries, and since energy policy is also security policy and industry policy and economic policy and everything else, just getting that much more decentralized structure, being much less dependent on few suppliers, is definitely a positive thing for the world. But I also think that you moved a little quickly away from the first question, and just as a comment coming from a country with lots of onshore wind farms too, with offshore wind farms on the horizon. I think it's very important that the concern of the local municipalities are taken very seriously, because it's human to worry when something new and big happens in your backyard. You need to address that. You can't say that this isn't happening and there are all sorts of other reasons why you should accept this. But just from my experience, having been seeing more and more offshore wind farms pop up in my own backyard, backsea, this is an issue before the offshore wind farms actually get there. And of course it is an issue, because you worry that you see these visualizations and you think it's always going to look like that. But actually you can only, there will be other factors at sea. There'll be fog, there'll be rain, there'll be dark, other things. So it's an issue before, but it usually the worries die down because it's not as bad as you think.
Oh, thank you for these words. I hope those will be encouraging, really, to some of those who have been skeptical about offshore wind just due to this aspect of being visible from the coastline. But we have to somehow wrap up the panel, and Edis and Andris have not said anything for a while, and your wrapping up words, maybe, Edis.
I can say maybe a very short answer on this previous question. Will it impact the fossil economies? Definitely will impact, but I think we as Latvia, who is not fossil economy, I think it's in our interests, in our security of supply interests, to raise up our own generation and to reduce our dependency on these fossil economies which are providing us these fossil fuels. And I think this winter showed us that we need to act quickly, need to act effective to introduce our new generation capacities here and to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. And maybe some summaries from my side. I think if we are talking about the regional cooperation, I think together with our regional partners we can move forward quick, effective, and with less costs. I think that's the benefits what we can get also for such a regional cooperation.
It's a great summary from you, Edis. And last but not least, Andris, of course we should go green, but also in an environmentally friendly way, right?
Of course, in our way, how we see it, environmental things are not forgotten. We don't think about harming nature or forgetting about nature things or interests. So I don't see that the balance is not that we are losing interest of nature, but just balancing and finding the best ways how to find these economical and environmental things and put them together. So this is our perspective.
Great. To wrap up, basically, the positive effects, scalability, less impact than for onshore wind, possibility for new industries, for new synergies, ports, businesses, You can't see them. In fact, especially from a flat land like Latvia and probably also Estonia and Lithuania as well, there's an untapped potential. There's still availability of territory despite competition with other areas like maritime transportation, fishing, recreation, some others, defense industry, definitely defense interests. So there's still potential there. And yes, and there's a slightly less impact of the not in my backyard aspect as well, which is absolutely crucial when you speak about wind on shore. So it looks like we are on good track. It's good that you commented also on Elwind. I want to thank all the panelists. I think the contribution was really good. It was very good assessment of things, and we can be quite confident going into further detail during the next panel. So I would like to thank all of you, and with a little round of applause from the audience here in the room. All right, thank you.